are still in Oscar season. Tim, we should plug ourselves.
Yes.
On Sunday, the 25th, anybody who's in Los Angeles, Sunday the 25th, we will be with the rest of the Film Week, the KPCC Film Week review crew, and Larry Mantle at the Ace Theater, connected to the Ace Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. That, I think, starts at noon, or do we just have to be there at noon?
We arrive at noon. I think it gets going about 1-ish, so
yeah,
the big
about 1.
show.
So it's a big deal. So you can go online and get information for that. If you go to the Ace Theater website, I don't even know. They haven't even told us what the website is for tickets. But if you want to waste a Sunday afternoon watching Tim and me and all of our Film Week colleagues up there on stage arguing about the Academy Awards, as we do every year, that will happen on February 25th. And it's a good time. The Ace Theater is a fun old theater.
Beautiful old United Artists Theater.
Yeah,
Charlie
that's
Chaplin.
Right. Built by Charlie Chaplin and the rest of the.
It's never been renovated. It's lovely, but it never needed to be renovated because it's never been out of use.
Although last year wasn't there a little leak from the roof that was dripping it was dripping on Christie's head. That was kind of funny. It was a rainy day, and there was a minuscule pin leak somewhere in the ceiling, and it plopped on poor Christy Lemire's head. Made for a funny moment. So anyway, that's on February 25th, the Sunday before the Oscars, 1 week before the Oscars, which are on March 4th. And then that show, of course, goes up on the radio on Friday the 2nd. So anyway, it'll be a good time. Good time had by all. I'm going to start off. We got a bunch of anime. I'm going to roll through this little pile of anime here, and for anime fans, let you know what's up on the docket this month. Anime continues to be one of the few genres that really has not been in any significant way dented by Netflix or streaming or anything. It's a super loyal following, and it's a world unto itself. And there are a lot of companies like Viz and Funimation and Section 23, which handles all of the various, like Made in Japan and Sentai libraries. These guys, they knock it out of the park constantly, and they got a lot of stuff, and it's a huge industry in Japan. So here we have an interesting release from, this is from Sentai by Section 23, but it's Warner Brothers branded at the same time, and it is Food Wars, the second plate. Utterly bizarre, some of the stuff they come up with. This is, food is a big deal in a lot of countries, in a lot of places. France and Japan, perhaps foremost among them. Italy, I think we could say as well. Those are major food societies, and Iron Chef and all that stuff. You understand the Japanese, they are very, very serious about their food. There are sushi restaurants where you would have to mortgage your house just to get one dish of, it's an art form. Anyway, so we have a thing here. Food Wars basically combines the Japanese obsession with doing animated shows about the politics of high school with cooking. So this is all takes place in Totsuki Academy. And it's basically, school politics about becoming a master chef, and it is kind of weird, but strangely enjoyable. I could see this actually becoming more of a video game than anything else. Anyway, it's well animated, curious storytelling. How they get the drama out of it didn't quite connect to any of the characters, but I found it interesting nonetheless. And then we also have from the wonderful people over at Viz, Terraformars. That's all one word, Terraformars. Terraformars. Really tremendous artwork. This is the season 1 of this, and it is really quite an impressive science fiction thing. The idea here is that the Earth is consumed by a virus, and everyone on Earth is dying. And the only way that we can survive is to take this one group of people who've been genetically modified to be able to live on Mars. and turn Mars into our new home. And it's kind of a whole colonization drama and saga, and it's really creative. It goes in some bizarre directions you just would never expect it to go, and yet it all makes sense when it kind of comes back around to the end. I am curious to see where this goes. This is 13 episodes from this first season, and it includes a lot of interesting art gallery stuff. Really, really, really interesting artwork. It's just some of the most interesting anime I've seen in a long, long time. Napping Princess, I thought might have gotten an Oscar nomination last year. This is from Shout Factory and G-Kids. This came out earlier last year. I covered this on Film Week as well. This is just a really, really wonderful story. It takes place in the very, very near future, 2020. Right on the eve of the Tokyo Olympics, and it's kind of a walk through this girl's imagination, and she's she's sort of like this inventor girl, and then there is a very weird kind of Alice in Wonderlandy adventure that transpires after her father is kidnapped, and it goes into this also goes into some very interesting kind of weird directions. Interesting commentary on the current world, on our technology, on our business culture. All these things really factor into it, especially as they pertain to Japanese culture. But Napping Princess did not get an Oscar nomination, kind of fell out of the conversation at a certain point. But I still think it's a really fine film, really well written, very interesting, quite a non-anime-like anime film. And similarly, Typhoon Noruda, Noruda. This is also Sente and Section 23. This uses the concept of a typhoon as the instigating incident to examine some really interesting character politics. And this is about a bunch of people on a remote island and who are trapped there by the typhoon, and how the typhoon passing over affects their relationships and the ways to work together. And this also is really quite a sharp film.
Yeah.
Typhoon Noruda, Typhoon, as opposed to the Tyf spelling of it, Noruda. And another interesting one, which gets, again, into their obsession with school politics, Tanaka-kun is always listless. Who would put the word listless in a title? Japanese.
Japanese.
I'm assuming that's the translation of some kind anyway. So anyway, this is just about a guy who basically daydreams in school, and they use that as a launching point to develop this interesting relationship that he's got with this giant. And it starts to feel a little bit Big Hero 6-ish at a certain point. But again, it's not a science fiction thing. It's not a fantasy thing per se. It's not, at least not conventionally so. So it's kind of it's a nice diversion. It's nice. It differs from what we usually get on the really hyperactive anime stuff that requires volumes and volumes to just familiarize yourself with what's going on sometimes.
Yeah.
Then we've also got Berserk, Season 1. Berserk is all about the Black Swordsman, who is kind of a traditional Ronin-type character, except this time he's fighting demons and has this really cool sword called the Dragon Slayer. And it's just straight-up great adventure animation. Really, really fun stuff. It's really well animated, really intensely detailed drawing, and Berserk Season 1. Looking forward to getting some interesting follow-ups to that. Subsequent seasons are going to have some really interesting places to go. We've also got Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, complete series. This is basically a zombie story, but you're watching it again for the animation, the artwork, which is just tremendous. Really, really strong animation. And everybody's kind of now living in these fortresses, and they're all connected by trains, and it's, that's sort of the future punk scenario that is supposed to make this zombie story a little bit different. It kind of does. I don't think the story is all that interesting, but I think the animation makes up for it. So if you ever saw the British television series called My Partner the Ghost, it was called something else in the UK. Over here it was known as My Partner the Ghost. It's about a guy who, a cop who and his partner dies, and then his partner comes back as a ghost and is still his partner. Cute premise. Tim's laughing over here.
I like
it's
it.
basically like Blythe Spirit, except it's a cop show. And the British show was, the names of the two cops. Anyway, that's a little bit what the Morose Mononokean is. The complete series of the Blu-ray DVD combo set. And it's, except in this case, it's a guy who has kind of a spirit guardian angel figure, and there's a possession story. It's all very kind of rooted in a very strange set of Japanese mythology that doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're familiar with that mythology and a lot of the stuff in it. So I'm not. So it was.
No.
it was a little confusing and hard to get into. They say it's a comedy. I'm not quite sure what they call it a yokai comedy because the yokai, which is a mystical ghost thing. Anyway, I really didn't really know what's going on here, so it's very hard to follow. But again, interesting artwork, has kind of a watercolory look to it, nice watercolory palette, so that was all right. Ace Attorney, yeah. Ace Attorney, Part 1. Yeah, okay. So here's the thing. Legal dramas, I can get with when they're live action. But legal anime is just bizarre. This apparently is really, really popular, and it's kind of slapsticky and a little bit over the top. I think if you're really, really hardcore into anime, you'll enjoy this. Ace Attorney. It's 13 episodes. I don't really know what justice system it is being depicted here. It doesn't resemble ours, and I can't imagine it resembles the justice system in Japan either. So I have to imagine that they're kind of making this up as they go along, and it's like an animated Perry Mason with younger and better looking people and occasionally really weird slapsticky outbursts. But anyway, Ace Attorney, there it is. And then the last two, Time Travel Girl, Marian Waka. This is, I want to like this more than I probably do. This is based on a manga series, as I understand it. And it's all about a girl and her friend who come across a book that enables them to time travel. And it's a book that was, once belonged to her father. And there's all kinds of mystical kind of never-ending story type stuff in here. And then it becomes a little bit Nancy Drew-ish at a certain point. And then it becomes a little bit, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure-ish. And it kind of mixes and matches a lot of different genres here. And you wind up with a lot of famous people showing up here, and that's kind of cute in a Bill and Ted way, like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Edison. And I would even say it sometimes even feels like Quantum Leap, a little bit. So it sort of crosses all of that stuff. But you know what? It's educational, and it still skews a little older than my daughter would, but to enjoy it, but it's fine. Perfectly fine. And then lastly, Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches, the complete series. These are the cutest little multicolor hair witches you have ever seen in your life. Once again, we're back into high school politics, and it all takes place in Suzaku High School. And, I guess Serena the Teenage Witch? Who's the Teenage Witch?
Oh, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right?
Yeah, Sabrina.
It's like Sabrina times 7. That's what it is. Anyway, look, the whole idea of teenage witchery and teens having superpowers and all that, it's perfectly fine, and it's cute and it's adorable. And we of course have had what was the TV show with Rose McGowan and the other two?
Oh, Charmed.
Charmed. We got a lot of Charmed.
Yeah.
So yeah, this feels a little bit more like that. It's cute. It's cute and enjoyable, and I think it's perfectly passable. And it didn't require me to read volumes of backstory to figure out what universe this inhabits. As things like Gundam often do, which I just, the world of Gundam and all these other universes, it's just so huge, and there's so much going on. But anyway, so there it is. That's our anime this week, and I'm sure we'll have more in a couple of weeks because that stuff just comes out fast and furious.
You want to do some
new movies?
New movies for a second here.
Got a few new movies.
The Wonder. Which is a movie that I think we thought, or some people thought, that we might have been talking about around and about this time of the year. Jacob Tremblay.
People were surprised that they liked this. I remember at the time. I did not see it, but I remember a lot of people.
I saw it for the show.
And were you? Did you like it?
It drove me a little crazy, actually.
Yeah.
Drove me a little bit crazy, particularly the construction of it. It's broken into these sort of sequences that focus on several different characters. The way the trailer looks, it looks like we're just sort of like watching the life of this kid. But no, we sort of wander into the sort of specific perspectives of various characters. Some of the stories are stronger than others. This is a movie about this kid that has this sort of facial deformity.
Jacob Tremblay from
Room. And the makeup is good. Very clever, this makeup that they've done. So he has this facial deformity, but they've done this makeup in such a way that while he is in fact deformed, he is still cute.
All right.
Which is a deliberate thing, of course. The makeup is put on his face, and in the same way that you design a toy or something like that, and you don't want it to scare the crap out. It's a little monster toy, little monster toys or whatever. But the monsters still have to, in some way, be cute, and they managed to pull that off with this. And I don't know. That was an interesting thing. The movie itself is fairly irritating. Owen Wilson, particularly. Owen Wilson is playing this dad, right? He's the dad, right? This is his entire performance in this movie. Is every now and then, again, he'll put his hands in his pockets and say, "Your mom's not going to like that," and then he'll look over there at Julia Roberts. And just stand there with his hands in his pockets and let her. That's his whole thing in this movie. In any case, here it is. All kinds of stuff on this movie. 7 featurettes, the whole shebang. It's completely insane. The Silence of the Lambs.
Criterion, baby.
Yeah, Jonathan Demme, the late Jonathan Demme.
This has been out so many times.
Yeah, I must have 6 versions.
Of this. And I think everybody kind of, when Criterion comes out with something, you just kind of want to rest and say, finally, there we go. That's the last one.
Well, it's a new 4K digital restoration, the whole shebang.
And, Criterion released a DVD of this many, many, many years ago, and then they lost the license. Obviously, MGM snatched it back, and it became, a whole series of other DVDs, and I think then it was on Blu-ray a couple of times, and they had, the Hannibal Lecter collection, and they put them all together. Anyway,
with all the other movies.
So Criterion finally was able to convince somebody to give them a license again, and it's great.
Well, I don't know if any of the other ones have this audio commentary, this 1994 audio.
They do. That was the original one. They get to use it again.
Yeah. So this is fantastic in terms of that alone. This movie, 1999 one, I did the junket for this movie. It was like a press conference thing that they had with Jodie and Thomas Harris was there, and Jonathan Demme was there, and we had this really, really sort of interesting conversation. The other books don't stand up nearly as strong.
No.
As in that television series out there too. Yeah. But if you want to see that, I read that book. That's back when I used to read everything.
Yeah.
This movie and that book walked along together hand in hand very, very nicely.
The Ballad of Lefty Brown. This also got no Oscar love, and I
like that movie.
I did too. Lionsgate. It's funny. Lionsgate. I can't quite figure out their Oscar strategy. They seem to not really want to invest a whole lot. And Crash. I thought when Crash won, that was such a huge deal in 2005. Yeah. I thought, wow, there you go. And Lionsgate really kind of pulls their punches every year. They did it this year with a whole bunch of films, including Their Finest, which is still one of my favorite films of the year. And I thought that should have been in the mix. And you know what happened with Their Finest? Here's my read on it after talking to a number of people, because I called and Alonzo called and said, why are you not promoting Their Finest? Where is our screener of Their Finest? Why are we not getting any phone calls and emails saying, put Their Finest at the front of your screener list? You need to sort of rattle people.
Particularly since this was a year with Dunkirk and
Darkest
Hour.
Both of which are nominated for Best Picture.
So you toss this out just if you're going to skate on that a little bit.
And it's better than both of those. Yeah. And Their Finest, here's the deal. It was financed by BBC Films, and apparently Lionsgate, this is my understanding, Lionsgate was of the feeling that, well, BBC Films should be paying for the awards campaign.
For Christ's
and BBC
sake.
Films was like, no, you're the American distributor. You should be paying for it. And everybody got into a little tiff over who's going to pay for the awards campaign. And you wind up with a movie that's been out for a number of months on Blu-ray that would be very easy to promote.
Mm-hmm.
And they just dropped the ball, and it got no Oscar nominations because nobody wanted to pay for the campaign.
And this is a movie that is at least a couple of performances, possible nominations, maybe even a Best Picture nomination
for sure, Best Director too.
But Bill Nye unequivocally best
would have been great.
What supporting actor? I guess it would have been.
Anyway, that brings us to Ballad of Lefty Brown, another Lionsgate movie that they dropped the ball on. So there were some good westerns this year. Hostiles, my favorite film of the year. I just bar none. I loved Hostiles. And I also really like The Ballad of Lefty Brown, which features Bill Pullman in a great, crusty, old character part that we haven't seen him do before. And he basically, this is a story of, it takes place in, post-Civil War America. And we're at Montana, right? It's Montana?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're in Montana, and he's just the kind of the ranch hand for a guy who's on his way to become a senator for the state of Montana.
For the newly formed state of Montana.
And who is assassinated.
Yeah.
On his way there, out in the middle, boom, gun, rifle shot across the prairie, and it throws a monkey wrench into everything. And he's just this alcoholic old stage hand or a ranch hand who is kind of blamed for it because he should have been looking after him, and so he dedicates his life now to finding his boss's killer and sort of redeeming his reputation.
Gets a couple of buddies, and and they go out and they do the damn thing.
It's really great. Kathy Baker is still great. Jim Caviezel as the governor of Montana is great. Peter Fonda in a brief performance as his boss. Bill Pullman, terrific. I mean, it's just beautifully done. I thought this was a really solid film, and Jared Moshe, who directed it, does a great job. We'll have many other great films ahead of him. And wonderful audio commentary with Pullman and Moshe, and it's a good film on Blu-ray and digital copy. Ultraviolet still. Lionsgate has not migrated over to Movies Anywhere, but shouldn't take long. Anyway, I thought it was terrific. Ballad of Lefty Brown. Ballad of Lefty Brown.
Solid Western. Suburbia. Richard Linklater. It's sort of a middle '90s film when he was just sort of like beginning to sort of fill his way into his thing. He was kind of still doing that same thing, more or less.
Slackery thing. It's still part of the slackery thing.
The bunch of people hanging around town at post high school haven't quite figured it out yet.
Yeah.
What you get in this movie is Eric Bogosian wrote that play. As a matter of fact, that was adapted from one of his plays. But what you get in this movie are several young actors of the day who went on to do some interesting things. So you get your Giovanni Ribisi, you get your Steve Zahn, you get your Nicky Cat. So it's kind of a neat movie in that way, looking back 20 years and seeing who sort of floated their way up through all of that. Parker Posey, of course. Richard Linklater film. Not a whole lot on this. It's just the movie from Warner Brothers.
Yeah, it's Warner Archive MOD deal. So Romero and quasi-Romero.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. First, I'll make mention. Day of the Dead Bloodline, which is a Lionsgate film.
Savini, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, this is Hector Hernandez Vicens.
Oh, that one.
This is based on Day of the Dead, the Romero film. This is Day of the Dead Bloodline, and it's new zombie stuff, and the zombies are just darker and meaner and angrier and droolier and bloodier,
faster.
Faster and all that stuff. Whatever. This makes an interesting contrast to, and by the way, this is also an ultraviolet Blu-ray and ultraviolet combo set from Lionsgate. You watch this and all of its sophistication and all of its gore and all that stuff, and you just think, okay, fine, fair enough. And then you watch the new Criterion Blu-ray of the original Night of the Living Dead from
Black and white film,
1968.
1968.
Black and white, made for no money by George Romero in 1968, a film in the middle of the exploitation era when it should have rightfully just vanished among 1,000 other movies that were just almost the same, but it didn't. And for a lot of reasons. Now, here's the thing. The original Night of the Living Dead still scares the heebie-jeebies out of everybody, even though the zombies don't move quickly. They are slow. They're real zombies, meaning they are dead people reanimated, not people who just got some virus or something, which is the thing.
Yeah, they come out of the ground.
They come out of the ground.
Different thing, yeah.
And it is incredibly well made for no money, with no lighting. He uses the lack of budget to great effect, like the French did with the New Wave films, like Godard did when you see people looking in the camera, but you don't care because he's following Belmondo down the street, and because also I think the importance of it is Night of the Living Dead isn't just a zombie movie. It's about something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about society in 1968. It is about the way society is changing. It is about Vietnam. It is about race.
Mm-hmm.
It is about politics. It is about Johnson and Nixon. It is about all of these things that were in the zeitgeist in 1968 that nobody quite knew how to express. Nobody knew how to sort of grasp with these changes. And is it good and is it bad? And what kind of society are we becoming? And nobody quite knew how to wrap their arms around this. And then George Romero comes around and says, here's how I'm doing it. I'm making a zombie movie. And between the cracks, between all these building blocks, you kind of do start to understand in a very simplified, metaphorical way the way the society is changing. And it's a really, really smart film, even today. If you watch it, given that historical context.
The very casting of Dwayne Jones, brother.
Big time.
In that part, not long after the assassination. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, there you go.
It is. It's a terrific film. Tons and tons of extras on with this 4K digital restoration. It is, of course, a Blu-ray, so it's basically 2K, but a 4K restoration, and lots and lots of stuff on here, including a new thing with Frank Darabont, Guillermo del Toro, and Robert Rodriguez. 16mm dailies on here, which is really kind of fun to look at, and archival interviews with Romero and Dwayne Jones and Judith Ridley. Mm-hmm. Really, really interesting there. And then a new interview with about the way the ghouls were directed and how they were told to move and all that stuff. Really, really great. And then some 1967 newsreels, trailers, TV spots, lots of stuff. Night of the Anubis, never before presented work print of the film. It's really great.
You know what I was thinking of when I said Tom Savini? One of it might be the first junket that I ever did, 1990, remake of The Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
That was directed by Tom Savini, literally a remake.
Oh, that's right. It was.
Tony Todd.
You're right.
And all that. And I did the junket for that film, and I interviewed...
Romero gave that his blessing,
exactly, yeah, he gave that his blessing. Tony Todd is extraordinary in that film, as is, I think her name was Patricia Tramwell or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a young woman who played the same part. And it was contemporary to the day, so it was a film set in 1990. But as good as it was, as well made as it was, obviously bigger budget, good filmmaking. Tom Savini knows what he's doing, both in terms of the character, the zombies, and the Tony Todd, an extraordinary actor.
Yeah.
It was really, really good film. It could not possibly resonate in 1990 the way the other film did in 1968 because the zeitgeist was
changed.
The thing.
Yep. You're right.
That was just it didn't work that way. Blake Edwards, The Pink Panther Cartoon Collection, Volume 1, 1964 to 1966. I loved this
they're
cartoon
the best
series. They were the exact opposite of everything else that was happening in cartoons then. All the Warner Brothers, Disney, for that matter, all the wackiness, falling down, all the manic, the Daffy Duck, and all of that. Then you had the Pink Panther, with that Henry Mancini,
that music, that groovy music,
and he's just so cool, and he's making cocktails, and and people are doing all kinds of wacky stuff, and he's just sort of standing there being the Pink Panther.
It's cool,
and it was so it was really, really, really neat. Watch this not only for the cartoons but for that Henry Mancini.
Oh, the music!
That's
is
what's
so
here.
Good.
It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to get all those cartoons. I've been waiting for that because all the movies are on Blu-ray now.
Yeah.
All the movies, including the Benigni movie and all the other stuff, but the cartoons are just starting to arrive, and that's the only. There was a giant Pink Panther box set some years ago, like plush fabric box set that had, which I still have, that has all the movies and all the cartoons and everything, and now I don't have to worry about hanging on to that thing too much longer. Everything gets to Blu-ray. Got a couple of little things here on DVD from Mill Creek. Worth mentioning. They're TV movies that sort of fell between the cracks not too long ago, but it's nice that they're getting resurrected, and Mill Creek's bringing them out. Carol Burnett and George Segal, both wonderful in Seasons of the Heart.
Oh, wow. Forgot how wonderful she was in that.
Isn't that great?
You know, that was her first sort of big sort of dramatic-y kind of thing that she did. Yeah.
Yeah. They're really, really sweet. You know, it's family drama, and she's a publishing executive. Carol Burnett is here. And essentially she inherits her grandson. I hate to say inherit. She receives custody of her grandson after her daughter, has drug problems, and it's just such a sad situation, and I know situations that are almost analogous.
Well,
to this.
The reason why it was so poignant at the time is because Carol, her daughter, was going through some of the same sort of
similar
things
stuff,
at the time, and it was all sort of in the news, and it was a big deal for her to sort of like take that on.
It was a big deal, and it was really it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's really worth discovering. Seasons of the Heart. Carol Burnett and George Siegel are both absolutely wonderful in it. And then another really good, solid family drama based in fact, but a very, very different story is A Sudden Fury, A Family Torn Apart, with an unbelievably young Neil Patrick Harris and a terribly young Johnny Galecki in it.
I remember that movie. That movie. Yeah, terribly young indeed. When you look at Johnny Galecki and recall that he was like, whatever in that movie, and then you think about him playing a teenager in The Big Bang Theory 20 years later.
Right.
Right. That was sort of, it wasn't the Menendez brothers.
Well,
but it was a bitey kind of thing.
Yeah.
Menendez-ish.
Menendez-ish. Two brothers that murder their parents. And yes, it was not very specifically said that this was about the Menendez, but and there are other stories that are analogous to this as well that it could also have been based in part on. So really, really interesting, and it's not. What's interesting about it is it's not just about the issue of these guys killing their parents. It's about the abuse they suffered that presumably led them to kill their parents, and is that justifiable? And that's a really interesting idea, and that's where that film goes. And I give them all the credit in the world for doing that.
Should we get a little campy over here?
Yeah, why not?
I guess that's what it is. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Yes!
Oh, man. 1978, this thing was.
Now,
again, I actually saw this in theaters in 78.
Talk about zeitgeist.
Yeah.
If this had been not made in 1978, if this were made today, nobody would care.
Nobody.
They'd be like, "Why didn't you put it on YouTube?"
What is this akin to the Sharknado movies that this is there, right?
It was the Sharknado of its day,
and so it would live on whatever that would be, and this kind of thing. Anyway, this movie it just goes on and on and on and on. Special features is what you want to get this for. It's just packed.
Totally.
With everything you can possibly think of on a newly remastered 4K digital transfer too. So there's that. Look, you know what I love about this movie is the 100% practical special effects. Gigantic, little people in tomato ball shaped things rolling around and other gadgets and stuff, and people pulling stuff people throwing stuff from off screen. That's the way they made this movie. They abused the actors by throwing crap at them.
Yep.
As opposed to making them stand in front of a green and or blue screen like they did back today. Special Collector's Edition Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
From Arrow Video comes The Gruesome Twosome. Now, here's what you have to understand. The Gruesome Twosome is a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie. It is one of his gore films, kind of one of his gore films, that it's not like Blood Feast. This is campier. Now, if you've seen the documentary that Tim and I were a part of and that Ray Green made, Schlock, Secret History of American Movies, from way too long ago, we touch a lot on Herschel Gordon Lewis. We really do. And he made Nudie Cuties before that. So he had a sense of camp. He had a sense of a mischievous sense of camp. And this is one of them. This is basically about a woman who runs a wig shop and her son going around scalping people so they can make wigs out of their scalps.
Yeah.
That is literally what this movie is about. It's called The Gruesome Twosome, and it is gory. It is also silly. It is ridiculous, and it comes with tons of extras, including another Herschel Gordon Lewis movie called A Taste of Blood, which is a vampire thing, which is so bad that they just figured, throw it on as an extra. Why? No one's going to buy it separately. So go ahead. You get it all. So there's tons of other stuff on here. Archival audio commentaries for both films by Herschel Gordon Lewis. And and it's I'm not going to recommend this if you're not a Lewis completist. There's just no point. But if you are, it's certainly worth checking out. And Arrow does a lovely job. The transfer is very, very solid.
Aftermath. What comes after World War III? That was a hell of a tagline, actually. I kind of dig that. What comes after World War III? This is one of those sort of, I don't know, early 80s, actually. I guess it is films set in a sort of apocalyptic world. A spaceship returns from space to find that the Earth has been hit by a nuke and all that kind of. Look, these films were a lot of fun back in the day. They were all aping, to one extent or another, the films that sort of came along post Star Wars.
Yep.
And they were sort of high technology films set ever so slightly in the future and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's one of those kind of things. A lot of action, a lot of wacky. It's actually a kid movie to a certain extent. Lynn Margulis is in this movie. As it happens, I know her.
Mm-hmm. And we've got a whole bunch from Kino this week. Some really cool titles from Kino. The first is from the Redemption line, and it is called The Diabolical Dr. Z. Now, this is a Jess Franco film, which usually means crap.
Yeah.
Because Jess Franco makes crappy movies. It's more interesting than your usual Jess Franco film, and for that, I give credit to Jean-Claude Carrière, who co-wrote the screenplay. Now, if you read my piece on the greatest screenwriters of all time, who were not included in that New York Magazine piece that's up at DigiGods, right at the top, beneath Robert Bolt, I include Jean-Claude Carrière.
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Claude Carrière is one of the greatest screenwriters of all time. He's like 83 now. He's still going strong. Wrote a lot of stuff for Buñuel. He wrote Valmont for Milos Forman.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote The Unbearable Lightness of Being for Phil Kaufman. He's amazing. Okay, Jean-Claude Carrière is a genius. And what he did here was he whipped this script into shape for Jess Franco and gave him probably the best piece of material he's ever had in his entire life. It is a mad scientist movie. It is very much in the vein of Georges Franju's Eyes Without a Face. It's very much in that. It's beautiful black and white photography, and you get some of that in the audio commentary here. The guy who wrote Obsession, the films of Jess Franco, Tim Lucas, is the commentary in here. Really, pretty much that in the trailer, like the only extras here. But the story is a little bit silly in some respects, as from a premise standpoint. You've got this like there's like a mind control thing and a mad scientist, and the revenge angle is very Jess Franco. However, it's really interesting what you can see what Carrière did to it. He really tried to deepen the characters and kind of make the relationships a little bit more than just generic slasher horror film stuff. And it winds up being pretty much the best Jess Franco film I think ever made, thanks to Jean-Claude Carrière. So that is The Diabolical Dr. Z. We also have some others that have been mined from studio vaults, and Kino has the licenses. One of them is Baby's Secret of the Lost Legend with William Catt, who we talked about last week, of Greatest American Hero, along with Sean Young and Patrick McGowan. And what I remember most about this is, apart from being a silly movie about people who discover an animatronic baby dinosaur, I'm sorry, a baby dinosaur. We know it's animatronic. They don't know it's animatronic. It's not animatronic in the movie. I'm just being silly. But when William Catt and Sean Young, look, it's a baby dinosaur. If I saw a baby dinosaur, I wouldn't run up and go, oh, this is a cute little noogie. I'd freak out. I would run. I'd call the FBI. And I'd say, save us from this horrible thing.
What the hell
it's going to grow up and become some kind of freaking monster. Anyway, so Baby Secret of Lost Legend is interesting for two significant reasons. One, I think it was originally supposed to be directed by Roger Spottiswoode, who wound up just producing it. But here's what makes this interesting. One, it has a Jerry Goldsmith score, which is really good. Mm-hmm. It's a really good Jerry Goldsmith score. And number two, the director of photography was the great, the amazing, the extraordinary John Alcott. Primarily known for, obviously shooting Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon, but also for Greystoke, one of the greatest cinematographers of all time. Truly an amazing genius. Anyway, this was one of his final films. Not his best work, obviously. You're making a movie about a baby dinosaur, which is basically E.T. I mean, the whole let's face it, the whole thing was kind of cribbed from E.T. Made 1985, just a few years after E.T. So it's still in the bloodstream. But
yeah, that was still going on.
And then here are the last three from Kino. These are all from the MGM vaults. Christopher Reeve in The Aviator with Rosanna Arquette and Jack Warden. This is I am so partial to this movie. It was directed by George Miller, the other George Miller, who did The Man from Snowy River, who's also Australian. And this is just a wonderful period film with Christopher Reeve and Rosanna Arquette in Little Adventure, kind of a very Indiana Jones-inspired adventure. Takes place after World War I. I thought this was very, very enjoyable and fun in every conceivable way. And it feels, yes, it feels like knockoff Indiana Jones, but I enjoyed it just the same. I think it still holds up. And then there's also Lou Ferrigno in Sinbad of the Seven Seas.
Ah, yes.
Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. 1989, Schwarzenegger obviously getting some traction as Conan, which was, when was Conan? That was 85?
84, 85. 85. Conan and the Destroyer.
Yeah. So obviously Lou Ferrigno at that time, I'm sorry, Lou, forgive me. I know you're partly deaf. I know it's a speech impediment, but I have to do this. Obviously at that time, Lou said, how come I not getting all of the good roles? Why don't I get any of these parts? I want one of these parts too. I'm tired of playing the Hulk. I played Hulk on TV. I forget to have an Arnold Schwarzenegger role.
You know what? The Hulk.
I had to do that. I did.
Lou's Hulk.
I know I'm going to get slammed and I have to repent.
Lou's Hulk. Just let me say.
Yeah.
Was on television. Obviously, Bill Bixby playing the Banner. Yeah. Lou's Hulk was actually quite good. I've been watching it lately.
Yeah.
He plays that character. I mean, because he doesn't have the benefit of all the. He plays that character with all kinds of empathy.
Yeah,
and you have empathy for the character and sympathy. He's very.
I have empathy.
It's just his face, He don't get to talk.
I have empathy for him. He is wearing tight little pants every week. Those things must kill. Unbelievable. Anyway, so he got his shot doing this ridiculous Enzo Castellari-directed, Italian-financed thing, Sinbad of the Seven Seas, which is really silly. But Castellari is a guy who made a lot of this cult junk, and it's got a cheesy kind of fun to it. It doesn't really work, but if you just don't take it too seriously, you'll have fun with it. That was made for Canon, by the way, released in the U.S. by Canon. And then here is the one. This is the one. You got to get this. This is amazing. I'm kind of surprised that MGM UA let this one go instead of doing just a crazy, mad, awesome special edition release. But bravo, Kino, you killed it with this one. The Thomas Crown Affair, the original from 1968 with Steve McQueen, directed by Norman Jewison, who was just coming off of his Academy Award win as producer and director of In the Heat of the Night. He didn't win director, but he did win for producer. And it's a tremendous film. I like the remake as well with Pierce Brosnan, but the Steve McQueen Faye Dunaway version still has just such a cool sense of just 1968. You just feel the decade. You feel the music. It's still a really great movie. The Michel Legrand score is just so breezy. It just captures the decade and that part of the decade in such a beautiful way. And tons of fantastic extras here, including an audio commentary by Norman Jewison, a commentary with Lem Dobbs and Nick Redman. Nick Redman, one of the principals over at Twilight Time, who has some titles we're going to make mention of in a moment, and a Norman Jewison interview, and a 1967 on the set featurette. So Thomas Crown Affair on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Excellent. The Thomas, the one with who was it? Rene Russo
and Pierce Brosnan
and Pierce.
Yeah.
That one. I really like that movie.
I do too.
That Steve McQueen movie over there is a better movie, but I like that Rene. That was a good movie.
I did too.
I just remember that because I was kind of pissy about it at the time, 90 whatever when it came out. But did I watch it? It turned out to be pretty good. Anyway, Drag Me to Hell.
Love this movie.
I love this movie. This was kind of like a return to form for Sam Raimi. Because Sam had done that Bill Pullman movie.
Yeah.
With Billy Bob Thornton, which was
based on the book,
based on that book,
and
it was a simple plan.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right.
And it was just him. It was just a completely different Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
But and then of course that was that pre or
that
post Spider-Man.
That was pre Spider-Man.
Pre Spider-Man. I think that's why he did that movie.
What was the one about the
Dark Man?
No, not Dark Man. That was also before.
That
was the other book about the girl and she's taken away from her home. What was that?
I don't know if I can remember that. We'll look it up.
I'll pull it up.
You do that while I look at this. Anyway, Drag Me to Hell was another one of those moments where Sam Raimi, when we were young, Sam Raimi was used as a horror guy.
Yeah.
Not to mention Xena, Warrior, Princess, and Hercules, and all that kind of stuff. Did you find it?
I'm coming up with it. Hold on.
And then Drag Me to Hell, 2009. Man, this is one hellaciously good movie. It's a horror movie.
So much fun.
About this young woman. She's a loan officer in a bank, and she's in competition for the promotion with
This is the guy who did the Evil Dead films. This is like back in his Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead Sam Raimi. Yeah. that kind of, as opposed to like the Army of Darkness Sam Raimi, and she refuses a loan to this, I don't know, I guess old lady, but I think she's like a gypsy or something like that. Yeah. And the old lady puts a curse on her, and I'd be goddamn. I'm sorry if this movie isn't
I'm wrong.
Just the creepiest
I was thinking
movie.
Peter Jackson. I was thinking Peter Jackson.
Oh, Peter, which one are you talking about?
I was thinking of a different. I was thinking of the thing he made after the Lord of the Rings films. No.
Frighteners?
No, it's a different thing. Now you're not going to make me look
now
I'm
going to look at that.
No, you're right. He did Drag Me to Hell right after the Spider-Man films.
He did that's what it. Okay.
That was it. Yeah,
and
he did Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, and then he just said, "Screw it, I got to get back to my roots."
Making that CGI Spider-Man bounce around that screen is killing me. And he just made this wicked stand up all the time horror movie. That doesn't play nearly enough around Halloween. Halloween, you think
it's so much. This movie is just straight up fun.
Yeah,
it is straight up fun. And Sam Raimi is one of the few people who realizes that horror can actually be fun if you just don't take it too seriously.
Just seriously enough, but not too seriously.
There's a scene where she is fighting the old woman in the car. It is not just terrifying. You will be screaming and laughing at the same time. And you know what? Watch it over again and again and again, and you will realize it's not just funny and terrifying. It's an incredibly well-made scene. It's incredible.
It's a brutal scene.
The filmmaking is fantastic.
And it's covered so beautifully. Yeah. And that fight is just because it's like a fight for real. Yeah. It's funny, but it's like this fight for real.
I was thinking of the Lovely Bones.
Lovely Bones,
Peter Jackson,
which was adapted from
Peter Jackson made that after King Kong and before The Hobbit. So it's the
then a very popular book. That book at the Earth core. One of those neat old middle '60s Peter Cushing films, set during the Victorian period, where all that sort of steampunky kind of stuff is going on. They're gonna get this giant boring machine and drill down into the ore. And Doug McClure, he must have done a half a dozen of these things.
Doug McClure,
he was one in a balloon doing this. I don't know all of these ones. Usually H.G. Wells or something like that. And what they do is they end up in the middle of and there's all these scantily clad sort of like cave women. Really terrible sort of animatronic again, monsters or dinosaurs or whatever they are. I love these movies. They're always so much fun. This one has a couple of different interviews on it, including an audio commentary with the director, Kevin O'Connor. And of course, the great Peter Cushing is in this movie. So, you can't really go wrong with anything like that.
We've got 4 terrific ones from Twilight Time. The first, I'm always so impressed with that Twilight Time, the stuff that they managed to kind of pluck out from the studio archives. From 20th Century Fox in 1946 is Dragonwyck, which is just such a cool film to just find. It was directed by Joseph Mankiewicz. It was his directing debut. And, Joseph Mankiewicz, of course, one of only 2 people ever to win back-to-back directing Oscars. Did All About Eve and, Letter to Three Wives. And this is really, really a fun Gothic period suspenser. Really, really great mood. Perfect studio film from the time. And one of the few kind of studio legit films that Vincent Price ever made.
Yeah.
Vincent Price and Gene Tierney are both just absolutely terrific in this. Vincent Price just chews up the scenery. Dragonwyck, of the title, is this big estate, and these movies all took place on big estates, whether it was Rebecca or Jane Eyre. There's always some big spooky castle or big spooky estate as a backdrop of this, and It really borrows a lot from those, but it is still really, really, really fun. So if you love all that gothic stuff from the 1940s, 1930s, 1940s especially, Joseph L. Mankiewicz's debut film, Dragonwyck. And then we also have My Cousin Rachel, which is such a wonderful movie. My Cousin Rachel was made in 1952, still feels like a film from the 1940s. This is based on the Daphne du Maurier novel. Written by the great Nunnally Johnson and directed by Henry Coster, features an incredible performance by Olivia de Havilland. If you know the novel, you know that this is just one of those all-time great. It's a gothic romance, but it's one of those all-time great parts for an actress. And this was the first film in Hollywood that Richard Burton did. And he really he gets eaten alive by Olivia de Havilland, but he's good. He's still good, but it's her movie through and through, and it is absolutely terrific. And I would put this right up there with something like Rebecca, which I just adore. Moving a little bit more modern, we have Husbands and Wives by Woody Allen. Twilight Time continues to release all the TriStar stuff that Woody Allen had accumulated, and doing a wonderful job of it. Nice Blu-ray transfer. Great performances here. You know, this is Woody Allen in the early 90s. Still feels a little bit like the 80s.
I think that film's just absolutely brilliant.
Was this the last film he made with Mia before everything went?
Yes, before everything went. As a matter of fact, that film was in theaters
while it was happening.
It was all happening.
That's what I was going to say.
Sidney Pollack and all of that, and all kinds of associations were being made.
Because there are things that people started to read into this movie when all that blew up.
I was one of those people.
Yeah, I remember. You and I had just kind of started up at that time. Yeah. Anyway, so for that reason alone, you may want to watch this. It's got all kinds of interesting stuff dovetailing. He was
not to mention those performances. I mean,
he and Sun Yi were having an affair while they were shooting. Oh my word! Yeah. Anyway, Husbands and Wives, Woody Allen from 1992. Also, let's not overlook Judy Davis and Blythe Danner, who are tremendous in this. Liam Neeson was in this.
I've forgotten that he was in that.
I know. It's amazing the people you forget are in these movies.
Was in that movie.
And then a last one from Twilight Time, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. They're all Twilight Time keeps releasing Paul Mazursky movies too, and God bless him and thank you for it.
We honored Paul at LAFCA.
We did
a couple of five.
I nominated him. Ray and I and Len Clady all put that name up there. And Paul Mazursky has since passed away, but his movies were so iconic. And Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice is oftentimes just referred to as the swapper movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's more than that.
So much more sophisticated than that.
It's 1969. It captures the era, and certainly the wife swapping concept that was sort of a thing among a certain upper middle class.
It undermines all that stuff.
It's just Mazursky
with reality.
Oh, he's so smart and such one of the all-time great screenplays, produced by Larry Tucker, his longtime partner. And let us not forget one of the all-time iconic scores from Quincy Jones.
Yeah,
absolutely terrific. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice on Blu-ray with a lot of great extras, including an audio commentary from Mazursky and Robert Culp and Elliot Gould and Diane Cannon. Obviously, the one missing there is Natalie Wood, whose death is now getting put on the front pages again. Now that
Robert Wagner
is a person of interest.
Yeah,
but
he always was, really.
Yeah, and then Julie Kirgo and Nick Redman, again, principal of Twilight Time. They do another audio commentary as well. It's just tremendous.
I wanted to talk about these two Milestone films from Milestone. The Dumb Girl of Portici and Shoes, both 1916. Both principally Lois Weber films, although her husband at the time, Philip Smalley, worked on The Dumb Girl. Yeah. Lois Weber, of course, being one of the premier and preeminent female filmmakers of the early days of cinema.
Yep. And Milestone has been really pushing her career in a great way, and I'm just so glad they have.
So Lois Weber, she made a wonderful short. This is how forward-thinking and how what a social activist she was, a feminist at the time, started her own studio, all of that. And was as famous, people forget, she was as famous, as known a filmmaking person as D.W. was in 1915. So it's not like it's not a thing of where no, she was a worldwide famous person. Millions and millions of people watch these films. The Cabbage Patch Fairy is a wonderful old film. You can find it on YouTube. It's one of her very, very early films. It might be her first film, but this is the one thing that's wonderfully daring about that little short film. You got Lois wandering around in this scene, butt-ass naked,
Yes.
playing a fairy. And like 19, I don't even know what it is. Like, because that's actually before this. Might be about 1915, 1914 or so. In any case, both of these films are absolutely extraordinary films beyond the fact that they happen to have been made principally by a woman, Lois Weber. And of course, as we sort of wander still through this sort of Me Too moment, Oscar is less male than it used to be. We talked about the Academy Award nominations there, and how those are actually shaped up in a very interesting way. And one of the reasons why that is so relevant, because if you go back to the beginning of cinema, there women are and were doing all sorts of extraordinary work back at the beginning of cinema, and why that went away. And in any case, you have several bonus features on the Dumb Girl of Portici here. You have a couple of features: the Immortal Swan, Anna Pavlova, who of course is in this film. Footage that had been lost of the great ballerina. So this is just extraordinary stuff for a whole bunch of reasons, and you should definitely get it from Milestone, Shoes, and The Dumb Girl of Portici, mostly by Lois Weber.
Yes, Lois Weber, such an important figure, and I'm so glad she's being rediscovered. And then the last few here on the movie front before we probably wrap up a little bit on television. I'll see if we can get into some foreign stuff. A couple from Warner Archive on Blu-ray. The Hanging Tree and The Flight of Dragons. The Flight of Dragons is an animated film, which is a really interesting thing to show up on Blu-ray from Warner Archives. I never would have expected this, but I'm glad it does, because this comes from Rankin Bass, and I, of course, am a huge Rankin Bass fan, as anybody knows. Obviously, all of their stop motion stuff, the holiday specials, Santa Claus Coming to Town, and Little Drummer Boy, and all that stuff, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But they did a lot of 2D animation as well, like Frosty the Snowman and various other things, and they did have some really interesting feature work during a moment, and this is one of them. The Flight of Dragons is really, really probably some of their best hand animation, their best cell animation, and it's based on a book by Peter Dickinson, and given a really wonderful feature treatment here. And it may also be the best screenplay ever written by Romeo Muller, who wrote everything for them. Romeo Muller, fascinating guy, just a big, heavy set, very talented writer who would just crank out whatever they wanted him to crank out, and he basically was the in-shop screenwriter for Rankin Bass. Does a wonderful job here. A lot of people were like, well, can he write anything that's not 40 minutes long, that's not, Santa Claus is Coming to Town or Rudolph or, the holiday specials? Can he write a feature? And he does. He does a wonderful job, and he does a wonderful adaptation and some great voice work here. Victor Buono and James Earl Jones and Harry Morgan and John Ritter. It's really, really wonderful. Larry Storch, it's just, you hear the voices and it takes you back, and it's good stuff. The Hanging Tree is also a wonderful rediscovery. This is kind of one of those, might be sort of the first quote unquote revisionist Western. We had the sort of celebratory Westerns for many years, and Unforgiven and a lot of those early Clint Eastwood films are considered revisionist Westerns, but you kind of do have to go to the Hanging Tree in 1959 really to find the genre being a little bit more angry and bitter. This is an very aging well. Gary Cooper, Maria Schell, and Carl Malden, who just shows up in everything great then. Takes place not too long after the Civil War in a Montana gold camp, and it is. Of course, where gold is involved, that there will be, like in the Treasure of Sierra Madre, all of the worst inclinations of human beings will be unveiled by their greed and their avarice and everything else. But this goes into some interesting sideways places too. You have a very young George C. Scott who shows up here as a preacher. Maria Schell, kind of represents every immigrant who ever came to America to struggle for a future that was uncertain. And it's the symbolism here of everything related to humanity and to Americanism in particular is really quite powerful. So
Download Dave's the sort of principal director on that. But,
yeah, who did just Programmers before this?
Well, yeah, and actually Carl Malden did some work on this film, and I forget who ended up finishing it. But
yeah,
but the direction of the film was truncated.
Yeah,
kind of like Gone with the Wind. You know, everybody directed a scene or two.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
That's true. Kind of things,
yeah.
What are you going to finish up over there?
Let me just finish off real quickly.
You do old TV, and I'll come on and do a little new TV.
So anyway, this kind of TV. There's TV and movie crossover here, so it's appropriate. This is from the Mill Creek Hollywood Profiles line, which is new, where they are putting together compilations of movies and shorts and documentaries and TV appearances for certain personalities. We've got the Shirley Temple collection and the Lucille Ball collection here. Both of them just kind of loaded up with stuff, and it's a little bit haphazard. Like for example, Shirley Temple has 10 short films and 2 features and then 2 documentaries and a television commercial. It's sort of like, well, okay, if you have The Little Princess, you probably don't need to necessarily get this because the rest of it isn't essential. But if you don't, it's not a bad way to sort of start your collection. The Lucille Ball set is 10 television episodes of The Lucy Show, combined with a couple of documentaries, some television commercials, and 4 movies, including Her Husband's Affairs and Miss Grant Takes Richmond. And it is, again, a little bit haphazard, but it's a nice overview if you are a fan of the stars.
Indeed, 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 indeed. I got a little new TV over here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Broad City, season 4. I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Broad City.
Yeah,
Alana Glazer in particular. I have no idea why I fell into this show just sort of arbitrarily. One of those situations of where I need to watch something. What's this? Two wacky chicks in New York roaming around being lewd. Okay. And you watch it. It just turns out to be this actually very, very wild and funny show, but a kind of a thoughtful show that has this arc over seasons. So like by the time we get to season 4, still the same show. The kind of core of it is all still the same, but the ladies have grown a little and learned a little, and there's a little poignancy in a scene here or there, and then they get back to doing a bunch of crazy crap. And I got to tell you, I just like this show a lot. Abby and Alana. And frankly, particularly Alana, a lot of great, very Jewy jokes in this show because the girls are both Jewish, and this whole thing, it's just fabulous, and it harkens back to a comedy of old that you would see in here and back in the old days when they weren't afraid to tell jokes like that. Anyway, this has over an hour worth of special features. It's Comedy Central from Comedy Central. Neat stuff. The Deuce, David Simon's show. And George Pelecanos, who of course gave us The Wire and all of that. So here they have given us the first complete season of The Deuce with James Franco and Maggie Gyllenhaal, right?
Yeah.
James Franco playing like himself, the 2 characters, the character's brother, Maggie Gyllenhaal, the sort of matron of this sort of like up and coming little porn establishment, as the whole porn scene is just beginning to pop off in New York, and that sort of early. You know what I don't like about this show? It is mostly humorless.
Yeah.
These are the producers of The Wire, so what are you gonna expect? But man, they don't seem to understand that some of these people were doing it just for fun and money.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't all that dark,
No.
and you probably don't want to do this the rest of my life, but they just, there's just no humor in this show.
Yeah.
In the whole scene, they play nothing but the sort of edgy thing. So, but anyway, it's a big popular show, and a lot of people like it. HBO miniseries there. Penny Dreadful is a series that I thoroughly loved. It was only 3 seasons. Reconception of the whole sort of Penny Dreadful thing. So you've got Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein and the monster that he creates. You've got the Wolfman. It's sort of reconstructed Josh Hartnett playing him in a very particular sort of interesting way. Timothy Dalton. This is all set during the Victorian period. And a number of other very interesting things going on, including vampires and witches and absolutely extraordinary action scenes in these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sets. The writing, breathtaking. The score, breathtaking. And my girl, Eva Green, comes into this series in that last season, and just walks away with the whole damn show. You know, and not that everybody isn't great, but she just, she comes because first of all, she's Ava Green, and she is daring and just audacious, and it was a really neat series. You know what I liked the most about it? It ended after 3, and it stuck the landing. It knew where it was going because it knew it was going to end, and it wrapped. I didn't really like the 3rd season, what was going on in it, but when it realized we're not coming back, it figured itself out, and it stuck the landing and ended really, really well. Neat stuff. Penny Dreadful, complete series.
And we will wrap out this week with Time Life's release of the Jackie Gleason Show in color. Now, this is what's really interesting to me. The Jackie Gleason Show aired in color for 4 years, from 1966 to 1970. And
we're talking about the big variety show.
The big variety show. Which also featured Honeymooners sketches. You know, the Honeymooners was from the 50s, but he also kind of leaned into the Jackie Gleason Show as well, and made it a part of that. And I remember watching this show as a kid.
Oh, me too.
With my parents.
With the dancers, with the overhead camera and all that stuff.
But we watched it in black and white, on a black and white TV. I have never seen this show before in color.
You never knew it was in color.
I never knew it was in color, and boy, is it great in color. It's like watching it all over again. Milton Berle and the guest stars, Red Buttons, and a young Carlin, a young Nipsey Russell. It's just Frankie Avalon. It's just, it's amazing. It really is. It's a lot of fun. And those honeymooners sketches are terrific. They're great. So this is so refreshing. These are episodes that have never been released before. So I haven't seen some of this stuff since I was a kid, and it's amazing.
The variety. So they tried to bring it back a couple of years ago. They did that thing with what's her name from Saturday Night Live? The variety show. No. Post Carol Burnett.
No.
We're done.
All right, so the Jackie Gleason Show in color. You definitely want to pick this up. Let's hope a lot more of these come out. I hope Time Life really, really goes to bat for this show. All right, with that, we are done, and we will see you guys next week.